Welcome to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We are so excited to have you joining us on this journey where we explore different ways to empower your soul, whether it's healing in your kitchen or all the way up in the corporate world. Come with us as we look into different ways to heal your mind, body, and soul. Hey everyone, it's Catherine Cristani with another episode of Willow Healing Matters, and today I'm joined by Sam J. Peterson. So he is a former Army bomb technician and a combat veteran who turned personal struggle into purpose after nearly losing his life to PTSD. He now leads cutting-edge programs that deliver rapid, lasting relief for veterans and first responders battling PTSD, TBI, and depression. As a founder of Mind Spa Denver, Sam's programs use advanced therapies like TMS, ketamine, and neurorehabilitation to treat the root causes of trauma. His mission is simple: provide the life-saving care our nation's heroes deserve, fast, effective, and built by someone who's been in their boots. So a big welcome to the show, Sam.
Thanks for having me, Catherine. It's an honor to be here.
And I don't read people's bios until I actually jump in. But to go from a bomb technician, nearly losing your life, then experiencing everything that comes with that, I could imagine just alone being in as a bomb technician, the stress that would have come from that scenario and trying to compartmentalize that. And then moving back to, you're like, yes, and then moving back to working in society. Did you want to share a bit about that journey?
Yeah, that's a lot of veterans face this kind of issue and they come back into the real world. When we're deployed, life is very, very simple. It's eat and accomplish the mission, whatever that is, whether you're hitting targets or you're trying to build up partner forces. Like, your life is very, very simple, and there's very little influence from the outside world, versus when you come back, you're all of a sudden bombarded with all the little things that our lives entail. Like, just this for example, not having this damn thing in your pocket all the time, buzzing about God knows what, trying to pull your attention away from things. That level of distraction can wear on people very, very quickly that have dealt with trauma and have been overseas, in these really intense environments, but they're also really focused environments. And that's something I don't hear a lot of people talk.
Yeah, exactly. And exactly like you said, you're there, you've got your purpose, you have your mission, you know that that's what you've got to do. But then when you come back to reality, I want to say reality because it is like living again outside that mission and purpose, then yeah, it would be full distractions. And I fully agree that your phone is like a trigger. And, and my old boss, he got so triggered by the phone ringing all the time, he actually turned our phones off, like, so I fully understand what you mean, that it can be very triggering, especially the phone, and then having to deal with, I guess, all the external stimuli coming back in, and then, also then reliving everything that you experienced whilst you're on mission as well.
Yeah, I mean, it really is you get bombarded, and it doesn't take long for all of those external stimuli to build up into something that you kind of lose control over. And it doesn't take a whole lot of like inflammation in the brain, because that's one thing that, I'm sure you guys talk about on this podcast all the time. At least I hope you do. But something that I don't hear talked about in psychiatry at all is the inflammatory process that goes on in the brain when someone has depression, anxiety, PTSD, or traumatic brain injury. There's a ton of inflammation that happens in the brain, and that inflammation causes a lot of issues. One of the big ones is shunting off your cognitive function, because the blood vessels in our prefrontal cortex are very, very small. So it doesn't take a whole lot of stress, especially if someone's been inoculated to it, for lack of a better term. If they've been immersed in these stressful situations, it doesn't take a whole lot before their cognitive function kind of gets degraded by all of these symptoms.
Yeah, and it's like the amygdala response takes over, which is, that reptilian, I have to survive. And cortisol can be a bigger driving force in that and can have such a negative effect when exposed for long periods of time. Like you said, it does cause the inflammation of your brain, but also everywhere else in your body, and, that can, then lead to these triggers, which I imagine is what led to the PTSD for you, because it's like you have to come back and your brain's already, like dealing with the fact you nearly died, dealing with the fact that you've come back to all these stimuli, all these things constantly going on, and not necessarily having the support or help that you needed to transition back in to help with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's not, at least there wasn't when I was in, there wasn't a whole lot of assistance for these things. That the stigma was just starting to get chipped away at. Some of the treatments that we now use and are very commonplace in a clinical setting weren't around in 2010 or 2015, at least not as ubiquitously as they are now. When I got out, there wasn't a whole lot of support, and people didn't know where to go. And luckily now we're in a situation where not only organizations like mine, but other organizations around the country are getting on board with things like ketamine infusion therapy, psychedelics, TMS, hyperbaric. Like, there's so many awesome things we can do to get to the heart of these issues and start to heal the brain.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel, to explain, because I don't know what TMS is, would you feel free to
Yeah.
explain what
Yeah.
TMS is? Yeah.
Well, you should know what TMS is. It is TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, is an FDA approved treatment for major depressive disorder. It is the most effective non-drug treatment for major depressive disorder that exists on the market today that's FDA approved. So what TMS is, it's an MRI coil. So it's MRI technology. So we pass an electric current through sorry, let me start again.
No, go for it.
So yeah, TMS is using electromagnetic fields. We can influence neurons in your brain. So we pass electricity through this electromagnetic coil. It creates a magnetic field under the surface of your scalp, so actually in your brain tissue, and that tricks your neurons into wiring more cohesively in a network. One of the things that we see if we were to look at the brain of somebody who has PTSD is we would see an underactive prefrontal cortex and an overactive amygdala, like we've already talked about. What TMS allows us to do is reinforce those neural networks in places that have become underactive due to whatever disorder is causing it, like PTSD, depression, or anxiety.
Fascinating. No, I've
Oh
never
yeah.
heard of it before. This is
Oh
but it's funny because as an intuitive healer, like doing energetic stuff, I'll often get people to get a magnet and run it from the top of their head down their spine to discharge the program or belief system that is holding them in play. So it's almost like this is like the, I don't know, extremely amped up version of that.
this is like TMS would be like the if anybody's a Warhammer fan, this would be like the Space Marine of neural stimulation. But for this purposes, this is like a treatment that's on super steroids that the government
Yes.
made. Like this, we're in a very non-invasive way, we're able to stimulate these neurons and get them to cluster very densely, very very quickly. So this is. This science has been around since the 80s. TMS got its FDA approval for the treatment of major depression. I believe it was back in 2008. And since then, the industry has ballooned. And what's really cool is this technology isn't just limited to depression. There are off-label protocols for treating PTSD and anxiety. So in depression, we treat what's the structure called the dorsolateral left prefrontal cortex,
Yeah.
left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. The treatments for PTSD, we just move that medially. So we're treating right here. And then for anxiety, the right dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. So it's pretty insane that with this device, we can modulate your brain's activity and reinforce, different neural networks to help you get better faster. And really the important part here is you stay better longer.
Yeah, because it's taking you out of that vagus nerve response and, out of the survivalist, fight, flight, freeze, so that you can actually then step into a place of healing. Because what a lot of people don't realize is that if it's when you are actually in a more stable state that you can achieve the most with your healing and shift the most
Oh
things so
yeah.
you don't regret back to there. But sometimes you just need to get out of it to start with. Otherwise, it's really hard, especially if you're stuck in the depression cycle, if you're stuck in the anxiety loop, if you're stuck in that PTSD that keeps triggering you. It makes it really difficult to be able to actually actively find the healing that you need to step back out of it and not regress back in.
Yeah, well, that's a really good point. And the reason that you get stuck in that state is because of the inflammatory process that happens with all of those disorders.
Yeah.
And the fact, so like one of the big jobs of our prefrontal cortex, of this newer part of our brain, is to tell our limbic brain, the old animalistic part of our brain, to shut the hell up. And it really is. If you look at the like just a model of the blood vessels in the brain, you'll see that the blood flow from our heart goes straight up to these more primitive structures like the amygdala, so it's able to get energy whenever it wants. It's able to get resources. If there's something blocking off that blood flow, you're already dead. But our prefrontal cortex, our executive functioning center, the blood vessels in that area of the brain are very, very small. Like they're so small that a single red blood cell can pass through at a time. And it doesn't take a whole lot of pressure before, boom, you're shunted off completely. And now the cells can't get energy. They can't produce energy in the normal way that they do. So they have to switch over from what's called cellular respiration to anaerobic glycolysis. So cellular respiration is like burning natural gas. It's how our cells are, it's the most efficient way for our cells to make ATP. When they switch over to anaerobic glycolysis, this is like wood burning stove as far as like how much pollution comes out of that process. And that's how cancer cells make energy. So, that's why you see things like traumatic brain injuries increasing the risk of neurological cancers. It's because of that process. You're creating the ideal environment for a cancer cell to take hold. It's sitting in its own soup. And that whole thing, that anaerobic glycolysis, causes more inflammation. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist here to see that after a fairly short period of time, it's going to be really hard for your prefrontal cortex to tell your brain to shut the hell up because it doesn't have the energy that it needs.
Exactly. And, and it's funny from a brain development point of view, a lot of people don't realize your prefrontal cortex is the last part of your brain to develop. And it doesn't happen till you kind of step into that 13-year-old thing. And that's why there's been so much research showing that, video games and things actually aren't good for children under that age because they still haven't developed that reasoning. It's really interesting. Haven't
That is
developed
really
that
interesting.
reason. Yeah, they haven't developed that reasoning to say this isn't real and this is real. So it's like all this information. And then, like you said, when you go into that inflammation or you've had a TBI, those systems, because my background's a speech language pathologist, right? So
Mm-hmm.
those systems tend to be the ones that get shut down first because
Yep.
your brain goes into survival mode and you don't need to make decisions to survive. You need to breathe, poop, eat, go back to those basic functions. But that is the difference between surviving and thriving.
Yeah, yeah, and that's it. Really, it takes me aback, like looking at the U.S. traditional mental health system, that nobody talks about inflammation. Nobody talks about the fact that that reasoning part of your brain is being shunted off by inflammation. And if we got into that and really started looking at, okay, what can we do to globally decrease this inflammation phenomenon and get people more cellular energy, we would see, I believe, a significant drop in the levels of depression and anxiety that we're seeing today, because it's an endemic. Our country is dying slowly, and it is because of chronic inflammation.
Mm. And it's so funny, and I always say it's divine timing because I just went to a talk the other night in Sydney with Dr. John Demartini, And he talks about all this stuff, right? He talks about how the amygdala, when it's taking over, you can't have balance and you can't shift out of the PTSD because you can't get the balance. So he says, there's a memory and an anti-memory, and you need to find the balance between the two. But if you're constantly still stuck in the amygdala and in that, survival response, you're not going to be able to shift back out of it, and you're not be able to get rid of the inflammation and get rid of it. And then if you're in that inflammation, exactly as you said, it causes aging because your system is constantly fighting to try and stay alive. And he says often that's when people then learn how to shift out of that PTSD and depression, anxiety. They'll always get comments that they look younger because their cells are kicked back on and the aging and the decaying process isn't continuing anymore.
Yeah, well, like one of the therapies that we use, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, like just to your point there, hyperbaric oxygen therapy has been shown to be the only way that we know of, the only medical treatment we know of that'll lengthen the telomeres at the end of your DNA. So look, we're giving in with hyperbaric oxygen therapy, we're giving your cells basically an infinite amount of oxygen. We're increasing the amount of oxygen in your blood plasma by several orders of magnitude. And what happens? We can get your stem cell production up to eightfold. So your body starts to heal itself
Heal.
at a cellular level, and that's what we need to get to. Is let's take this inflammation down and let's start giving the brain all the resources it needs to rewire, and then shepherding that rewiring with things like culturally competent talk therapy. TMS is another great way to reinforce these neural networks pretty damn fast, because like the average time to feel the difference in a course of TMS, which is about 7 weeks long, is 2 to 3 weeks. So in a very short period of time, just with two of those interventions, 2 to 3 weeks, you could be looking at the other side of your symptoms.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's very powerful how you said too that once you get rid of, well, not get rid of, but once you shift the old program, you got to put something new in there really quickly because it's like a void, right? And if you don't replace it with something more positive or replace it with a new belief or a new set of skills, it's going to default automatically back to the old thing because that's what we do. We default back to the old patterns.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And it kind of brings up another point too. Um, you know, I'm in Colorado, so psilocybin's legal here, and we're seeing a lot of the proliferation of psychedelic medicine happen here in this state. And I hear everybody using the term neuroplasticity like it's this holy grail, and it's gonna unlock all of our minds and do all these fantastic things. Not the case. Like, neuroplasticity is neutral. In fact, it just means that your neurons are branching out and creating more connections. It doesn't mean that those connections are good. So it's not enough to just increase neuroplasticity. You have to guide it. That's the principles of set and setting that, have been laid out by MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. They're there for a reason. We have to shepherd these new states of consciousness in the people that we're helping.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up neuroplasticity and showing my age here. When I was at uni, they were like, we've just discovered neuroplasticity because they would say like the brain never changes and all these
Yeah.
things. And I'm just like, really? What? That doesn't make any sense to me. And just as like, in my early 20s, I'm just sitting there going, why would you not think the brain can keep doing all these amazing things, and keep, and working through that. And like you said, I like that you said it's like that place of neutrality because then it's from the neutral that you can create things and shift things and that sort of thing too. And there's so much other research about habit stacking and creating new habits and all those things. And it's all linked back to rewiring your brain, I guess, at this deeper level.
Oh yeah, it's all about rewiring the brain. I mean, that's why I'm in mental health, is so we can help rewire the brains of people that are suffering, because you're on a mental track. You are firing a certain way right now, and without that neuroplasticity, it becomes impossible to change. That we wouldn't be able to learn new things if it wasn't for neuroplasticity. But when we do it the right way, like we can increase it and create really optimal outcomes rather quickly. Like, to give you an example, like we do a lot of the combination of ketamine infusion therapy, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and the transcranial magnetic stimulation that I told you about. And when people engage in that along with talk therapy, we see them reach symptom remission from PTSD, depression, anxiety, and TBI symptoms. It takes a little bit longer than that to heal the brain, but we see them reach that symptom remission within 14 to 17 days.
Yeah, which is amazing. Versus years and years of therapy going around in circles and nothing shifting. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I
You're
mean,
like,
well, if you've got an inflamed brain, you're trying to like make a new pathway through a bunch of cellular detritus and inflammatory cytokines. Like you're trying to push electricity through a short. So until you address that inflammation, then you unlock the ability to make these changes much faster. Otherwise, people get stuck.
yeah, 100%. They do. And it's when you are stuck that you really need to go, why am I so stuck? And why is this not shifting? And I guess too, also having the ability to, a lot of the time it takes the courage to realize that maybe I want to change this and maybe I don't want to be stuck in this cycle. And for me, because I'm all about empowerment, it's taking your power back from people telling you that this is how it's going to be and here's all the meds you have to stay on for your life, because that's not the only way. And this is part of why I started this podcast, to share with people it's not the only way.
No, not at all. Not even close. I mean, how is the regulatory environment in Australia? That's something I'm super not familiar with. Like, what does your mental health landscape look like in Australia? Because I can tell you, for us here in the States, it is talk therapy and med management is the gold standard, and it's something that I have the best time railing against.
Yeah, and it's very similar here because we're very similar. Well, the only difference is that we kind of have Medicare, so there are free sessions, so we have got compensated healthcare. But at the same time, the most amazing psychologists I have met have stepped out of the system to find other ways than what they've taught. And that's often, the case because, and it's not to blame them. It's just the model that's being shared and it's the model that's being taught. And, it takes people, it takes that courage to step up and go, this isn't working. There must be other ways, and to always be curious and think, what's another way you can get around this? And I agree that I feel like it's not talked about enough. And I know they bring out all these days where, you have mental health day and are you okay day and all these things like that. But you need to talk about it often. And I don't know if you've been on Pete versus Anxiety show. Pete and I are quite good friends, but he says, he says you need to ask people about their mental health because it's not talked about enough, and it's such a big thing because, so often it's like a silent thing, right? Like no one talks about it. No one, and even, asking someone how they are genuinely, not just how are you and expecting a good reply because that's what we've been conditioned to do, but actually genuinely caring and reaching out to people can be such a powerful thing. And then saying, like, hey, I had Sam on this podcast. Maybe you can go talk to him, and maybe there's another way for you rather than being stuck in this loop that you've been conditioned to be in.
Oh yeah, and that our medical establishments have conditioned you to accept,
Yeah.
because it's like just doing talk therapy alone is not. If you're in a constantly inflamed state, like it has a much lower efficacy.
And it's also reliving the trauma again and again and again. And it's
Yeah,
actually not shifting you out of that trauma. So it's
that's
actually
just
not.
reinforcing it.
Exactly. And then that makes the neurons wire harder and tighter, and actually then makes it harder to shift without like an alternative treatment. So it's really intriguing
Yeah, I
to
mean
see how
it
that
it
works.
becomes autopilot. It really does.
Exactly.
And that's
Exactly.
that's why is ketamine legal for or used in mental health in Australia at all?
I'm not sure.
Oh,
I'm not sure. Possibly
well,
not.
it works really well, so probably not. Um, yeah,
That's a
that's
whole
one.
other podcast, Sam.
Yeah. Ooh, get you up on your soapbox. Love it. I,
Yeah.
I get to say, I get to say divisive shit about, veterans causes in the VA all day. I'm sure you could rail against the medical establishment in your country too. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
but like
Yeah.
just something like ketamine, it resets the brain bioelectrically. Like it is control alt delete for your brain. And that is such a powerful thing to take someone who is acutely struggling and within a week, most times,
Mm.
you have reset the brain and given them a new perspective, shown them that they can feel okay all the time. And once you do that, that can become your foundation to build better mental health outcomes. And, back to the neuroplasticity thing, you've also increased neuroplasticity with ketamine. So pairing it with therapy, especially if it's dosed correctly and these people have a good experience, those are really important points.
Yes.
You can make significant changes and help people get past those mental barriers that have held them back relatively quickly. Mental health does not have to be a life sentence. Like, we have the technology to make rapid changes in the brain, especially if the patient is bought in and willing to do the work.
100%. And I love that you brought up that point that the person is willing to do the work, because it comes back to you as a human making that choice to change. And it's interesting you bring that up, because I've interviewed a few other people who like teach with psychedelics or run like workshops and retreats and things with psychedelics. And the biggest thing that always comes back is not to become dependent on that. It's just there to as a tool to help you gain, like you said, insight into what it can be like once
Mhm.
you unpack all the trauma and the symptoms and shift out of that mental health state that you're in, and what it can look like on the other side. And I feel that that's an important thing to emphasize too, is you don't become dependent on it. It's not a permanent fix. It's just there to be used as a tool to help you get from A to B, and just to help the process a little bit easier, so
Yeah.
you're not fighting with your brain all the
Yeah,
time with it.
it's and people conflate the hey, I have to do work with like this is the placebo effect, and that's just not the case. You have to, in order to create these new neural tracks, you have to do things differently. You can't keep going through the same loop. These substances are there to assist you in getting outside of the frame, outside of those neural tracks that you built for yourself. But at the end of the day, if you go back to doing the same shit every single day, you're going to end up in the same place. And that requires some willpower, some discipline, and honestly, the right amount of shame. The
I,
dose
I,
makes the poison, but eventually, like, if you're stuck in these situations, you to a certain extent, you have to get to the point where you're sick of being you as you are right now. And that's okay. Like, that's actually good. That's the first step to going, hey, I need help. I'm screwed up, and I'm willing to talk to somebody who's a professional in this and get the hell out of my comfort zone so that I can change this thing to something that I enjoy being in.
Yeah, 100%. And exactly. And sometimes, I was talking to someone before, you have to hit that rock bottom in order to, get to that point where you're like, actually, I don't like my life right now. I need to find something else. I need to look for something else. And nearly every guest I've had on this show, they've all had a similar experience where they've got to
Oh
rock
yeah.
bottom, or their health has got to a point, and then they've gone, I can't keep doing this. I need to change. And it all comes back to you, but it comes back to you wanting to change and being problem aware and like solution seeking. So it can be
Yeah.
fine that you know about your problem, but if you're not ready to seek a solution and go about that, then you're just going to stay in your problem.
Yeah, or you don't realize that you need to change. Like, I'll tell you a story. Back when we first got into this, so right now, like, I've got a 3,500 square foot clinic. I've helped start a couple of different mental health programs that use all of these new tools together to get better outcomes, faster. But when I was first getting started, I helped to develop an intranasal stem cell protocol that we're hopefully going to be rolling out soon. And so my business partner at the time, he was a bomb tech just like me. He'd been blown up in Afghanistan, thrown against a brick wall, broke his spine. Then he got hit. He was parked at a stop sign, stopped at a stop sign, got hit at 50 miles an hour, knocked him out again. And then he went and fought professional Muay Thai kickboxing for a year in Thailand. And we looked at this dude's brain, and you could see the shin like on his temporal lobe. And just to give you an idea of like who he had become because of these injuries, like, he was a jackass. He would lose his shit at the drop of a hat and was super verbally abusive. Just as a business partner, like an absolute nightmare. And I kept making excuses. I was like, man, I've seen his brain. Like, he's fucked up. Like, we've got to fix him. As soon as we fix him, as soon as we get all that inflammation down, we put those stem cells in his brain, his symptoms go away. He's going to be different. He's going to be better. And man, was I wrong. Like we fucking healed his brain. We healed his brain. Like you could see it on the scans. Like his brain is not in the same state. It's in a better place. It's not as inflamed. He's got a lot more functioning, and we didn't change him. And that
He's still
just
an
goes
asshole.
just right there. Oh my God. Just right there that you can't make other people change. They have to want to.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter if you heal their brain and take all their symptoms away. That wiring is still there, and unless they want to change that wiring, it's gonna stay there.
100%, Sam. And exactly. What a perfect story about you have to be willing to change versus, you can do all the background things and then you still have all the personality issues on the top of it. But that's your choice and that's a conscious decision how you want to show up in the world.
Yeah, that's true. And there's that I think that scares people, but I'd like to propose the inverse here. Like there's a lot of agency in that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you have a lot of power to change who you are if you don't like the situation you're in. And hopefully there's someone out there listening that doesn't know about some of these treatments that we're using in Denver. But man, I just want everybody to know that like you absolutely can change your brain. You can heal from these things. We have the technology, like we can rebuild you, or really, we can help you rebuild yourself. Because at the end of
Thank
the
you.
day, you got to
Thank you for
engage. You
saying
got to
that.
engage with the process. Yeah. I got to walk that one
Exactly.
back. I got to walk
Ex-
that one back a little bit.
exactly. And I love that, the whole point of this is that our body is designed to self-heal, but when it's in that chronic state of inflammation, it can't do what it needs to do because it's too busy surviving, it's too busy making sure that you can keep breathing, walking, eating, talking, that it doesn't, it's not able to actually go into that point where you can heal.
Well, also, one of the we have several rate limiting factors that can get in the way of healing, and one of the big ones is the amount of oxygen we can actually take in through our lungs. If
Mm.
you can't really increase that other than doing severe breath work for long periods of time is the only way I could think of, other than
That's triggering in
hyperbaric.
itself.
Yeah, it is. So there's a portion of this where we do have to help our physiology out, and there are things like hyperbaric oxygen therapy that are designed to do that. And man, when you combine giving the brain more energy with focusing the creation of new neurons, and you want to do it at the same time, and you're engaged with the work, the sky's the limit. You can recover very fast and stay better.
As we start to finish up our time together, Sam, I ask guests that come on the show, if you could heal or change something in the world, what would it be?
Well, I mean, I'm gonna have to stay on mission with this one. I mean, my whole professional career now is changing the way that mental health is treated in our country, and hopefully by doing so being an example for the rest of the world. So I am dedicated to healing this mental health system and making it better. That's why I get out of bed in the morning, and just being able to give people hope that if you're in that hole right now, you don't have to stay there. And empowering these larger healthcare systems that we're a part of to realize and to value more effective care.
Yeah. 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 I felt that was going to be your answer. And I definitely agree. There needs to be some, I want to say parallel systems, because the systems are designed to do what they're meant to be doing. And I feel like it's just a new, it's like not fixing the old system. It's just a new parallel system that is an alternative that people can actually go, oh, there is another way. Okay, great. Let's jump on board with that.
Well,
Yeah.
especially here in this country, like the incentives are not aligned for fixing this. It is much more in the medical establishment's interest to keep people sick so they can stay on these drugs long term and they can profit from it. Which it's kind of weird. I've never met somebody who's ever expounded that idea in any form. Like everyone's always, when we get on these kinds of programs and talk about this stuff, it's always like, yeah, like let's get people better faster, keep better longer, hell yeah. But it's almost like the system has a mind of its own, that all of these individual practitioners are are a part of this greater whole that is just, there's so many incentives aligned that it's the programming of this system that needs to change at a fundamental level so that we're putting things that work first.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I feel there's a lot more to come. And I feel that, like, just knowing what I know, like the shifts are already in place. You know, like people are starting to question things a lot more. And I'm actually grateful for the pandemic because it made people question things more. Like,
Oh no, we
especially
can't
on the other
trust the
side.
government. I used to work for Uncle Sam.
And if people want to come find your clinic, come find you, where can they hang out with you,
Yeah,
Sam?
the best place to find information about what we do is on our website, mindspadenver.com. And the best place to find me is actually on LinkedIn. Sam J. Peterson, my headshot pops right up. And that's the best place to follow me for more content about mental health. And we also share some of the stories about, the veterans and first responders that we treat. So those are the two best places. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook. But if you want to get in touch with me, LinkedIn is the best spot, or shoot us a line on our website.
Beautiful. And I'll make sure to put all these details in the show notes as well. So thank you for sharing all your wisdom, Sam, and your journey. And I love what you're doing for mental health. Thank you.
No, thanks, Catherine. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We have so much love and gratitude that you have taken the time out of your day to empower you on your healing journey. The views shared by the person being interviewed might not necessarily reflect that of the host and should be used at your own discernment. Trust what resonates for you and follow your heart and soul guidance. If you have any underlying medical conditions or mental health issues, please consult with your healthcare provider before pursuing any of the recommendations. Likewise, you can always contact the person being interviewed to find out more information. This can be found in the show notes. Remember to activate, align, heal, empower, and find love in everything that you do.